Hi there, welcome back. Having learned how to compute the price of your product or service, as well as other factors you need to consider in making pricing decision, it is then important to also talk about the skills for pricing decision. It's very, very important to talk about the skills for pricing decision. What are the skills you need as a freelancer or as an MSME owner? To make the right decision? Number one, you need the market research skills, right? You must be able to carry out market research, understand your competitors, understand how they arrive at the price they charge for their product or the service they render. So one of the things you want to be versed in is market research skill, your ability to research and understand how prices are being determined, understand how competitors calculate their price, understand how other factors that competitors also consider before arriving at pricing. It's important for you in order to make sure that you are able to charge the right price for the right product or service. The next most important skill you need to also learn is financial analysis skill. You need to be able to understand certain figures in the financial statement and their relationship and how one figure affect the other, i.e., how the increase in, say, revenue, for instance, affect the overall profitability of your business. It's important to be able to understand that. And this will be discussed in detail in subsequent module where we will talk about basic financial reporting and as well as financial statement analysis, where you will be taught as well on how to not just calculate some of this ratio, but how to interpret this ratio and make sense of this ratio for the purpose of decision making. Another skill that is also important is negotiation skill. It is important to learn how to negotiate. Negotiation skill is very, very important so that you don't overvalue your service or even undervalue your service. You must be able to negotiate from the standpoint of value. The value you are proposing or the value you are bringing to the table is what should form the basis for your negotiation. Very, very important. And why this is also important generally is that you are able to also make sure that you don't lose your client base. It's important because when you overcharge clients, they may tend to move to the next competitor or just a substitute somewhere. So it's important to also learn negotiation skill so you don't undervalue or at worst overvalue your service. The next is value communication. You must learn communication as well. You must be able to communicate your value. It's important. This is just an extension of negotiation skill. You should negotiate on the table based on the value you are able to bring, and you must be able to communicate that value in the most effective and efficient manner. Very, very important. So you must be able to justify your price through the value, the premium that your product is proposing that perhaps other competitors do not have. So it's important to be able to do that. The next is also dynamic pricing strategy. It's also important to understand that determining price for a product is not a fixed thing. You must be able to be flexible with pricing based on maybe the customer loyalty, based on the demand, based on the seasonality, based on the project complexity. There are some projects that are not really forthcoming in certain season. And there are certain seasons that you have the influx of that kind of project. People want to do that project, for example, towards year end. People want to do certain project. So the demand relatively is expected to be higher towards year end, for instance. So you want to determine that to also fix price because at that point, your product becomes indispensable. So people will have to fix your price based on the demand and the season. It's quite important. And of course, like I mentioned, project complexity. Yes, the more difficult or taskier a project is, the more the price you may want to charge because it requires maybe more skills and expertise amongst other things. So you must understand that pricing strategy has to be dynamic depending on the markets you are operating in and other factors. Having understood this, then you then need to now see how pricing also trickles down to income. Very, very important. When you charge high price for your product, it affects your income. So the higher the price, the higher the overall income. Also, the lower the price, the lower the overall. So what we are trying to say here is that your price have a direct impact, right, on the income you generate. The next is passive value. So it's important to also mention that sometimes you need to be strategic about your pricing. And this strategic means that you are determining your pricing based on the perceived value, right? The premium that your service offer. And based on that, you're able to even attract clients that are willing to pay more because they know the value of what you are doing or the service you are proposing. So it's important to mention that, of course, the higher the perceived value of your product or service, the higher the price you tend to charge, and of course, it will also trickle down to the overall income generation and profitability. The next for a freelancer is flexibility as well. You can be adaptable to in terms of determining your prices, right? You're able to adjust your price based on the complexity, the urgency, the client's budget, and that will influence the overall earnings, right? There are some gigs that requires urgency. That way, you are able to maybe charge more because it's urgent, or maybe because the complexity is more, it requires more expertise. And in that case, it will also increase the overall income. For MSME, how does pricing also trickle down to income generation? It helps in revenue optimization because, of course, the formula for calculating revenue at the very basic stage is your price times the quantity sold. So, of course, if your price is higher, you expect that you get a higher revenue because there is a direct or positive relationship between price and revenue. What does that mean? It means that as price is increasing, quantity is also increasing. The next is market positioning. You must be able to also understand how your business is positioned in the market because competitive prices can help you as an MSME to capture more market share. And when you capture more market share, what does that mean? It means you have captured more customer or clients to your side. And what does that mean? It means tentatively your revenue will increase and it will affect the overall profitability or income of the business, thereby making the business having a sustainable income over time. It's important to also mention for an MSME that you need to also take seriously cost recovery and growth because your pricing should be such that cover your operational costs along with reinvestment for expansion. It's important to also consider reinvesting into the business for expansion purposes. For example, when you make profits, you want to reinvest for expansion purposes. How then do you manage income streams effectively as a freelancer? Number one, you use income and expense tracking tool. This has been taught in previous module. A case study of Expensify was explored for this purpose. So also, it is also important, number two, to be able to separate business account from personal account is important. As a small business owner, as a freelancer, you should have an account that only houses the revenue and expenditure that are relating to your service or good. And this is particularly important even as Nigeria prepares to implement the Nigerian Tax Act 2025 in January 1st, 2026. It's important to do this. Issues around taxation will also be discussed subsequently in this lesson. Right. So the next thing you have to do is also to conduct regular reconciliation, compare invoices, payments, and do your bank statement reconciliation weekly, sometimes even daily if possible, because you are able to also see transactions that are in your bank statements that you have not recorded and you're able to bring them in. You have to also diversify your income sources, right? As a freelancer, you make sure your income source is not only from a source. Then, of course, monthly review, where you're able to analyze income trend, you're able to analyze your revenue growth, your revenue dip. You have to find out why and what you need to do better. How do you monitor and manage income stream effectively as an MSME? As an MSME, you implement accounting software, tools like ZoBook, Xero for real-time tracking, and even at the likes of Expensify also work as a small business owner. Cash flow forecasting. You must be able to predict inflow and outflow to avoid liquidity issue. Situations where you are not able to pay salaries, for instance, situation where you are not able to meet your short-term financial need. It helps you to do that. The next is budgeting and variance analysis. You're able to compare your actual income with your projected income regularly and track the variance. Segments income stream. Yeah, in a situation where you have different segments where you make income, you're able to also account for all those segments differently. An accounting standard speaks to that. IFRS, it speaks to operating segment to say you have to report for each segment separately, particularly when what they begin to generate to the overall profitability becomes material. The last but not the least is financial reporting. You're able to generate monthly, quarterly report for strategic planning. So this is important to manage income as a freelancer and as an MSME owner. Thank you very much.